Do you know what it feels like when your own child looks at you like a stranger? Like you're standing in your own home, surrounded by family, yet somehow invisible. That was my Christmas night. The smell of honey-glazed ham still hangs in the air. The candles flicker soft gold across the table. I set myself. Every plate, every fork, every napkin folded with care, because that's what mothers do. I even wore the emerald brooch my late husband Henrik gave me 40 years ago. It's my lucky charm. It was supposed to be a happy dinner, laughter, stories, warmth, but instead I ended up on the floor. Literally. It happened in a blink. My son Dax looked at me with that tight smile he wears when his wife's watching. "Mom, please," he said, voice clipped. "That seat's for my mother-in-law," and before I could even understand, he placed both hands on my shoulders and pushed. Hard. The shock came first, then pain. The edge of the table hit my hip and the cold wooden floor met my palms. I remember staring at a drop of cranberry sauce near my face, bright red against the polished brown floor. My own breathing sounded too loud. 12 people sat frozen around the table. Not one moved for a second. I thought maybe someone would gasp, rush to help. But the only sound was my granddaughter Priya whispering, "Daddy, why did you push Grammy?" And his answer, "Eat your potatoes, sweetheart." That moment, it broke something inside me. I've lived 73 years, I've survived breast cancer, losing Henrik, watching our savings vanish during the recession. But that silence after he shoved me hurt more than any of it. I pushed myself up, my hands trembling. My stockings had a run now, my hips screamed with pain, but what hurt most was the emptiness on my son's face. Like he'd already decided I didn't matter. His wife, Felicity, was already sliding into my chair, the one Henrik built himself because I needed better back support. She smoothed her napkin across her lap and smiled. "There we go, much better, ha." I almost laughed, almost. Instead, I bit my tongue until I tasted blood. I stood there trying to keep my dignity while my body shook. "Mother Cordelia," Felicity said sweetly, "why don't you take the folding chair we brought? It's right there by the kitchen door." The folding chair, metal frame, vinyl seat, the kind used for church potlucks, sitting right next to the trash can. How fitting, right? I nodded, pretending it was fine. Pretending this wasn't my house, my table, my Christmas. I could feel every eye on me, but none with kindness, just polite avoidance. I sat on that cold chair, trying to swallow the ache in my throat while everyone went back to eating like nothing happened, forks clinking. Felicity talking about her mother's holiday home, someone asking for more wine. Ha ha ha, laughter bouncing around like nothing broke tonight, but something did. I stared at the food on my plate, the food I'd cooked since 5 a.m. Ham, potatoes, rolls, pie, all of it made with love. My hands shook as I lifted the fork, and for the first time the food tasted bitter. It tasted like humiliation. "Are you okay, Mom?" Dax finally asked after what felt like hours. He didn't even look at me when he said it, just kept cutting his ham. "Fine," I said, my voice cracked. I hated that it cracked. "You know," he continued, "Felicity's mom has back problems too." It made sense to give her the good chair. I turned toward him, my voice quiet. "Your wife's mother isn't here, Dax," he shrugged. "Yeah, but symbolically, it's about respect." Respect, that word hit me like another shove. Respect for a woman who didn't even bother showing up. I had cooked for her, set a place for her, spent $300 on a new mattress because Felicity said her mother's back was sensitive, and she wasn't even here. But apparently she still got the good chair. My throat tightened. I whispered, "I raised you better than this." Silence. Then Dax just said, "Dinner's getting cold," and turned away. Sigh. That was the moment I realized I wasn't part of the family anymore. I was a guest who overstayed her welcome. I excused myself quietly. No one stopped me. The kitchen was colder, quieter. The hum of the refrigerator sounded louder than my heartbeat. I ran cold water over my elbow. The skin was scraped, bleeding a little. The red water swirled down the drain, disappearing fast like everything else in my life had lately. I stared at my reflection in the window, a tired woman in a holiday dress, blinking back tears. "Henrik and I bought this house in 1978. We painted every wall ourselves. He built the kitchen table with his hands. I could almost hear him now. Don't let them take your piece, Cordy. Don't let them make you small." But I felt small. So small I looked at the pie cooling on the counter, perfect golden crust, lattice design I spent 2 hours making. The kind of detail nobody notices anymore. That's what mothers do. We keep caring even when no one says thank you. Then, out of nowhere, something inside me shifted, not rage, something sharper. Clearer. For the first time in years, I wasn't crying. I wasn't begging. I was thinking. My hands were shaking less now. I picked up my phone from my apron pocket. My fingers hovered over a name I hadn't touched in 4 years, Randolph Kemp, attorney at law, Henrik's old college friend. The man who handled our wills, our estate, everything. I typed slowly, deliberately. "Randy, it's Cordelia Westbrook. I need to make changes, major changes. Can you come to the house tomorrow morning early?" I stared at the message, my thumb trembling over the send button. For once, I didn't overthink. I just pressed send. 40 seconds later, my phone buzzed. 6 a.m. works, I'll bring coffee. And just like that, something cold and calm settled inside me. The pain, the shame, the shaking, all gone, replaced by something harder. Something that knew exactly what it wanted. I whispered to myself, this is how the end begins. They had no idea that Christmas night, the mother they pushed aside wasn't the same one sitting at that table anymore. The folding chair might have been next to the trash, but by morning I'd make sure they'd be the ones out of place. You ever had a moment where humiliation turned into power? That was mine. And the next morning, they'd see it. That night the house felt heavier than usual. Maybe it was the silence, maybe it was me. The laughter from the dining room floated through the walls, muffled and sharp at the same time. I could still hear Felicity's voice, bright, fake, syrupy sweet. Pass the gravy, please, ha ha ha. The sound made my skin crawl. I leaned against the kitchen counter, trying to steady my breath. My elbow throbbed where it hit the floor earlier and my hip pulsed with dull pain. I opened the cabinet and pulled out a clean towel. The scent of detergent mixed with cinnamon and ham, familiar, homely, safe. Funny how smells can comfort you even when your heart is breaking. I touched Henrik's old coffee mug sitting beside the sink, the one that says world's grumpiest morning person. He used to drink from it every day before work, pretending to be annoyed when I teased him. You're not grumpy, you're dramatic, I'd laugh. He'd wink, sip his coffee and say, that's how I survived marriage to you, Cordy. Sigh. I laughed softly to myself now, but it came out more like a sob. Henrik's gone, 4 years now. Cancer took him slow and cruel, but he faced it with more grace than I ever could. Before he died, he made me promise to keep this house alive, to fill it with family, with noise, with love. I tried, Henrik, God knows I tried. But love doesn't mean what it used to. Not to them. The clock ticked loudly. 8:45 p.m. Everyone was still eating, talking, pretending nothing had happened. Pretending I hadn't been on the floor an hour ago. Pretending my son hadn't pushed his own mother for a seat. My throat tightened again. I poured myself a glass of water, but my hands were still shaking. A few drops spilled over the edge, running down my wrist. The cold helped somehow. It grounded me. I sat at the kitchen table, the one Henrik and I built together, tracing the small scratches along the surface. Each mark held a story. Priya's toy car races, Dax's homework nights, Henrik's coffee rings from lazy Sundays. Now all those memories felt like ghosts haunting a place where kindness had died. When did it change? When did my son stop being my little boy who brought me dandelions from the yard and start being the man who looked at me like a burden? Maybe it wasn't one big moment. Maybe it was 1,000 small ones that I ignored because I kept hoping he'd remember who he used to be. I looked toward the dining room door, the shadows of my family moving across the light. Felicity was laughing again, loud, effortless, like she owned the house. Maybe she thought she did. Dax probably let her believe that woman always had a way of making me feel like a guest in my own home. When she first came into our lives, I welcomed her with open arms. I remember telling Henrik, she's confident, that's good for Dax. He smiled and said, confidence or control, we'll find out. Turns out it was both. I still remember their wedding, big, fancy, far too expensive. Her family from Connecticut with their pearls and perfect smiles. Old money, she'd say proudly, as if that excused her attitude. They didn't let me invite half our family because of limited seating. But somehow there was space for her distant cousin who brought a yacht brochure as a gift. I should have known then. The years that followed were slow poison. First, they skipped Thanksgiving because her family does it properly at their country club. Then last Christmas, they stayed for just 2 hours before running back to the island. Each time I told myself next year will be different. Next year, maybe Dax will remember the mother who taught him how to ride a bike, who worked nights to pay for his college, who held him through every fever and heartbreak. But this year, he didn't remember. He just pushed. I stood up again, my reflection catching in the dark window above the sink. For a moment, I didn't recognize the woman staring back. Wrinkled skin, tired eyes, a red mark on her cheek from where she hit the floor. But behind that, something new, something cold and steady. I wasn't scared anymore. I was awake. I whispered to my reflection, you've been invisible long enough, Cordy. It's time they see you again. Then I smiled, a sad little smile. Oh, Henrik, you'd be proud of me tonight. I turned off the kitchen light and peeked into the dining room again. Felicity was pouring more wine. Dax was on his phone. Priya sat quietly, staring at her plate, my sweet girl. She looked up and caught my eyes through the doorway. Her lip quivered like she wanted to cry again. I nodded gently, mouthing, it's okay, baby. She nodded back, wiping her eyes. Aw, my heart squeezed. No child should see that. No child should see a parent choose pride over love. I stepped back into the kitchen and exhaled. That's when I noticed Henrik's file box on the shelf, the one I hadn't opened since he died. Inside were old papers, property deeds, will copies, insurance documents. He was always so organized, said he never wanted me to feel lost if something happened. I ran my hand over the lid. Maybe it's time to look inside again. I didn't open it yet, but something deep down told me whatever I'd find in there might just give me the power to stand up again. Not physically, emotionally, legally. Entirely. The laughter from the other room grew louder. Someone told a joke. Ha ha ha. Forks clattered, glasses clinked, but none of it touched me anymore. I wasn't part of that sound. I was already somewhere else, building a quiet storm inside me. I walked to the counter and cut a slice of the pie. I didn't feel hungry, but I needed something sweet to remind me life still had flavor. I took one bite. Warm, buttery, soft, tears rolled down my cheeks as I whispered, "Still perfect, Henrik." Then I laughed through the tears. "Ha ha ha. You'd say I'm being dramatic again, huh?" Maybe I was. But this time, drama was all I had left. I rinsed my plate, folded my towel, and turned the lights off. Upstairs, footsteps creaked, Dax heading to bed, Felicity following close behind. They didn't even peek into the kitchen. Didn't even say good night. Good. Let them sleep. Let them dream their pretty dreams while mine turn into plans, because tonight something in me changed. I wasn't just hurt. I was done being hurt. I looked once more at the dark window, at that faint reflection of a woman reborn. My lips curved into a quiet smile. "They think they pushed me down," I whispered, "but they just pushed me awake. They say every storm starts with a whisper." Mine began in that kitchen, with one message I was about to send that would flip our family's world upside down. The night stretched long after everyone went to sleep. The house was so still I could hear the tick-tick of the clock echoing through the walls. I sat alone at the kitchen table, my hands folded, eyes staring at nothing. The pie on the counter was untouched now, the coffee pot empty, the lights dim. The warmth of Christmas had turned to something icy, something I could feel under my skin. I don't know how long I sat there, but when I finally looked up, the digital clock on the microwave said 1:13 a.m. The whole house slept, except me. My mind was louder than any storm. I glanced at the family photo hanging near the door, Dax at 10, grinning with missing teeth, Henrik's hand resting on his shoulder. We looked so happy, so whole. My throat tightened. "What happened to you, my boy?" I whispered. "When did love become a transaction?" Tears came, but they didn't last long. They dried up before they even reached my chin. That was the moment I realized I was done crying. I wasn't helpless anymore. I was thinking clearly, painfully, but clearly. I reached for my phone. The glow lit up my face in the dark kitchen. My contacts list scrolled down and stopped at a name I hadn't seen in years, Randolph Kemp. Henrik's best friend, our lawyer. The man who'd handled every bit of our life's paperwork after Henrik passed. He was the one who'd looked me in the eye and said, "Henrik made sure you'll always have control, Cordy. No one can touch what's yours." I never really understood what he meant until tonight. My thumb hovered above his name. I hesitated for just a second. "What am I doing?" I muttered, but deep down I knew this wasn't about revenge. It was about finally standing up from the floor, not the physical one, but the emotional one I'd been lying on for years. I typed, "Randy, it's Cordelia Westbrook. I need to make changes. Major changes. Can you come to the house tomorrow morning, early?" I stared at the screen. My fingers shook over the send button. For 73 years, I'd lived for everyone else, for Dax, for Henrik, for family, for peace. But that night, I did something for me. Click message sent. My heart pounded as if I'd just done something illegal. I set the phone down and waited, expecting silence. But within seconds, it buzzed. 6 a.m. works. "I'll bring coffee." He didn't ask what was wrong. He didn't question me. Just yes, and that was enough. Something changed inside me at that moment. The fear that had gripped me since dinner started fading. It was replaced by something steadier, colder, stronger, the kind of strength that doesn't shout, it whispers. It calculates. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. The refrigerator hummed softly behind me. The Christmas lights twinkled faintly in the reflection of the window, like stars trying to comfort me. "You see that, Henrik?" I whispered. "I'm finally doing what you taught me, protecting what's ours." I closed my eyes, thinking of that night years ago when Henrik first told me about the Westbrook family trust. He'd been so serious, sitting at this very table with documents spread out. "I built this for you," he'd said, tapping the papers, "so no one, not even Dax, can ever take what's yours without your say." At the time, I laughed. "Why would Dax ever do that?" Henrik just smiled sadly. "Because people change, Cordy, and love makes us blind." Now his words echoed like thunder in my head. I picked up his old pen from the drawer, the one with the gold tip and tiny ink stains near the clip. Holding it felt like holding a weapon I didn't know I had. A small, harmless pen, yet it had the power to rewrite lives. I whispered softly, "Tomorrow morning that pen will set me free." The thought made me shiver. Not from fear, from relief. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for someone to save me. I was preparing to save myself. I walked quietly to the living room. The Christmas tree lights glowed softly, wrapping the room in gold and green. Gifts sat neatly underneath, the ones I bought for everyone. Scarves, toys, gift cards. Not one with my name on it. Funny how mothers can buy love all year and still end up empty-handed. I sat down on the couch, hugging a small pillow, letting my mind wander. The pain in my hip reminded me of the fall, but somehow it didn't bother me anymore. It felt like a reminder, a scar I needed to stay awake. Maybe that's how pain works. It hurts until it teaches you something. Then it becomes your armor. My thoughts drifted to little Priya, her innocent eyes, her soft voice asking, "Daddy, why did you push Grammy?" I could still hear it. That question would haunt me forever. That sweet girl deserved better. Maybe she'd be the one I could protect now. Maybe all of this, the years of being invisible, led me to this moment. I looked down at my phone again. The chat with Randolph glowed quietly, his message still on the screen. 6 a.m. works, I'll bring coffee. That single line felt like hope. The clock ticked closer to 2 a.m. The house was silent except for the faint wind outside. I stood up slowly, walked to the window, and stared out at the snow-covered lawn. The world looked calm, peaceful, untouched. Inside me, though, a storm was building, one that no one would see coming. I pressed my hand against the cold glass. Tomorrow I start over, I whispered. Tomorrow I stop asking for respect and start earning it back on my own terms. And as I turned away, a small laugh escaped me. Ha ha ha, soft, broken, but real. The kind of laugh that comes when you realize you've survived something that was meant to break you. When I finally went upstairs, I didn't sleep much. I didn't need to. The plan was already forming in my head, piece by piece, calm and sharp as winter air. At 5:40 a.m. I was already dressed. The scent of fresh coffee filled the kitchen. The pie was still on the counter, untouched, perfect. Just like my plan, headlights flashed through the window, a car pulling into the driveway right on time. I smiled faintly, the kind of smile that hides 100 memories in one final decision. Welcome back, Randy, I whispered. Let's change everything. They pushed me down for a chair, but by sunrise, I was about to pull the chair out from under their entire world. The morning came quietly, no birdsong, no sunlight streaming through curtains, just that soft, blue-gray winter glow that feels like the world is still holding its breath. The house was silent except for the faint hum of the heater. The kind of silence that makes you wonder if last night really happened or if it was all just a bad dream. But when I shifted my leg and felt the deep ache in my hip, I remembered. Oh, it happened, every bit of it, the shove, the chair. The silence. I made myself a cup of coffee. My hand still shook a little, but not from fear anymore, from something else, maybe anticipation. I sipped it slowly, letting the warmth burn my throat, keeping my focus steady. The snow outside looked pure and calm, almost mocking. Perfect weather for starting over, I thought. At exactly 5:58 a.m., headlights rolled into the driveway, right on time. Randy was always early. Henrik used to joke that he'd probably show up to his own funeral 10 minutes ahead of schedule. When I opened the door, there he was, long coat, gray scarf, coffee in one hand, briefcase in the other. His face softened when he saw me, but the smile didn't last. His eyes went straight to the bandage on my arm. Cordelia, he said quietly. You okay? I've been better, I answered with a half smile. He stepped in, brushed off the snow from his shoulders, and handed me a cup. 2 creams, no sugar, right? I nodded. You still remember? Henrik would haunt me if I didn't. That made me laugh softly. He probably would. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where my humiliation had begun just hours earlier. I could still see the faint scuff mark on the floor where I'd fallen, the mark that started it all. Randy set down his briefcase and looked at me for a long moment. Tell me what happened, he said gently, so I did every detail. The push. The way Dax's face hardened, Felicity's fake smile, the silence, the folding chair by the trash can, the tears I refused to let them see. Randy didn't interrupt. He didn't need to. His jaw clenched tighter with every word. When I finished, he exhaled slowly. That boy, he shook his head. Henrik would be furious. I know, I said softly, but he'd also be proud of what I'm about to do. Randy arched a brow. And what's that? I reached over to the counter, grabbed Henrik's old file box and placed it between us. It made a dull thud on the table, heavier than it looked. I want Dax removed from everything, I said. The trust, the will, the property, all of it. Randy blinked, taken aback for a second. You're serious? Never been more serious in my life. He opened the box, scanning through the documents. Henrik set this up years ago. You know that everything runs through the Westbrook family trust? I do now, I said. Last night I realized I'm not helpless. Henrik made sure of it. Randy flipped to one of the pages, the trust clause, and tapped it gently. Right here, subsection C, if the beneficiary demonstrates clear unworthiness or harm toward the trustee, assets may be redirected at the trustee's discretion. I leaned back, whispering. Henrik thought of everything. He always did, Randy said. He protected you even from your own son. The words hit hard, but they didn't sting. They just confirmed what I already knew. I wasn't crazy for feeling betrayed. I was just late in accepting it. Randy looked up at me. You're sure about this, Cordy? Once we sign these papers, it's final. Dax won't have access to a single cent. Yes, I said, my voice didn't tremble. This isn't revenge, it's correction. If I let him walk over me now, Priya will think that's what love looks like. I can't let that happen. He nodded slowly. All right then, let's get to work. He pulled out his laptop and the soft hum of typing filled the room. I sat quietly watching him, sipping my coffee. Outside, snowflakes drifted lazily, landing on the windowpane like tiny white promises. As Randy worked, my eyes wandered to the counter, to the cooling pie, the folded towel, the empty spot where I'd fallen. Every little thing seemed to whisper the same truth. Enough. He looked up from his screen. Where should the assets go? I didn't hesitate. to Priya in a trust she can access when she's 25, 50,000 to the women's shelter downtown. And the rest, I smiled faintly, to the Parkinson's Foundation. Henrik always said he'd donate someday. I think it's time. Randy's eyes softened. You really thought this through, all night, I said. I didn't sleep. I didn't need to. For a moment we sat in silence again, but it wasn't heavy anymore. It was clean, quiet, powerful. He typed for another half hour, then paused to take a sip of coffee. You know, he said with a small grin, you sound just like Henrik right now. I laughed quietly. That's probably the best compliment you could give me. He smiled back. He'd be proud of you, Cordelia. Truly, I looked down at my hands, no longer trembling. My wedding ring caught the morning light, glinting like a reminder. Maybe, I said softly, but this isn't about pride anymore. It's about peace. By the time the sun started to rise, the documents were ready, pages upon pages of new beginnings. Randy printed them out and laid them neatly on the table. Once you sign, there's no turning back, he said. I took the pen, Henrik's pen, from the drawer. The same one I'd touched last night. The metal felt warm in my hand, familiar. I don't want to turn back, I said. The first stroke of my signature looked shaky, but the rest came out bold, firm, steady. Each line felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I'd lost somewhere along the way. When I finished, I set the pen down and let out a long, shaky breath. It's done, I whispered. Randy looked at me, half proud, half protective. You sure you're ready for the storm that might follow? I smiled. After last night, I'm already standing in it, he chuckled softly. Fair enough. He gathered the papers, sliding them back into his case. I'll notarize these, get the witnesses, and file them today. By the time your family wakes up, this will all be legally binding. That sentence, by the time your family wakes up, sent a strange thrill through me. A mix of fear and satisfaction. By the time they woke up, their world would be different. I looked out the window again. The sky had turned from gray to pale gold. The first light of morning hit the snow, making it sparkle like diamonds. I hadn't seen anything that beautiful in years. I turned back to Randy. Do you smell that? He frowned slightly. Smell what? Freedom, I said with a smile. He laughed, shaking his head. You always did have a dramatic streak. Guess I got it from Henrik, I said, grinning. As he stood to leave, I walked him to the door. The cold air hit my face, sharp and fresh. I watched his car disappear down the street, the sound of tires crunching on snow fading into quiet. I stood there for a moment, the morning sun brushing against my cheek. My breath came out in small clouds. Inside, the house was still asleep. Upstairs, Dax and Felicity were dreaming, completely unaware. Downstairs, I stood tall, the woman they thought they broke, stronger than ever. By the time my son opened his eyes, I had already rewritten his future. But what he found on the kitchen counter that morning would destroy everything he thought he knew about me. The house was still half asleep when I heard footsteps upstairs. Slow, lazy, like a man waking up to a normal morning, the kind of morning he thought would start with coffee and comfort, not consequences. The documents were done. Every page signed, every line sealed. Randy had left an hour ago. My hands still smelled faintly of printer ink and courage. I'd placed the letter, the one I'd written myself, right in the center of the kitchen table. White envelope, black ink, simple and calm. The way truth should be delivered. I'd written it carefully, every word meant to sting without hatred, to hurt without cruelty. Because I didn't want revenge, I wanted understanding. I wanted him to feel, for just a moment, what I had felt lying on that cold floor, the shock of realizing the people you love can choose pride over love. I stood near the window, watching the snow melt under soft morning light. The world outside looked peaceful: white roofs, bare trees, smoke rising from chimneys. Inside, the peace was about to end. Dax's voice echoed down the stairs. Morning, he called, yawning, like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't pushed his mother 12 hours ago. He walked into the kitchen wearing his robe, his hair messy, humming to himself. Then he saw it, the envelope. He frowned, picked it up and looked around. Mom. What's this? Read it, I said quietly, not turning around. He tore it open, the sound sharp in the quiet room. I could hear the paper rustling, his breath slowing as his eyes moved across the lines. Then silence. It lasted maybe 15 seconds. Then came the first sound, his scoff, sharp and disbelieving. You've got to be kidding me. I turned, finally meeting his eyes. No, I'm not, he laughed, but it was dry and bitter. You changed the will, the trust. Mom, what the hell? I took a deep breath. I didn't do it out of anger, Dax. I did it because I needed peace. Peace, his voice rose. You just threw away my future because of one mistake. One mistake? My voice trembled, not from fear, from the weight of his words. You pushed me to the floor, Dax, in my own home, for a chair, and the worst part, you didn't even look sorry. You sat down and kept eating. He looked away, rubbing the back of his neck. It wasn't like that, you're exaggerating. You fell. I didn't fall, I interrupted sharply. You pushed me, he sighed loudly, running his hand through his hair. God, you're being dramatic again. It was an accident. Felicity's mom, your wife's mother, wasn't even here, I snapped. And yet you still chose her over me. He opened his mouth to argue, but I kept going. You know what's funny, Dax? I spent all night thinking about how to make you understand, then I realized I can't. Because you stopped listening to me a long time ago, so I'll let reality teach you instead. His jaw tightened. You can't just cut me off, it's illegal. Randolph Kemp handled everything, I said calmly. You remember him. Dad's best friend, Harvard Law, he made sure it's airtight. Every penny, every property, every asset is protected. You won't be able to touch a single thing. Dax froze. You planned this. I decided this, I said simply. After you decided I didn't deserve a seat at my own table. He stared at me, face pale, hands trembling. You're insane. I smiled sadly. No, Dax, I'm finally sane. A voice cut through the tension. What's going on? Felicity appeared in the doorway, still in her silk robe, hair perfectly set even this early. Her eyes darted between us. Why are you yelling? Dax's voice cracked. She cut us off. The will, the trust, everything. Felicity blinked. For a split second her mask slipped, then she forced a smile. That can't be right, Mother Cordelia, surely there's been some misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, I said, you'll both be fine. You have each other, her tone softened, dripping with fake sympathy. You're upset and I understand that. Last night was emotional, but we can talk about this. We're family. I almost laughed. Family. You watched me on the floor last night and didn't even blink. That's not family, that's cruelty dressed as manners. Her lips tightened. You're making a huge mistake. Dax is your son. He's your only family. Then maybe he should have remembered that before he treated me like furniture. Felicity's calm cracked. We've worked for years to build our future. You can't just… I can, I said softly. And I did. Dax slammed his hand on the table, making the letter flutter. This is ridiculous. You can't do this to me. I stepped closer. You did this to yourself. For a second his face softened just for a heartbeat, and I saw my boy again. The one who used to crawl into my lap after nightmares. The one who once said, I'll take care of you when you're old, Mom. But that boy was gone. Felicity put a hand on his shoulder, whispering something. He nodded, jaw tightening again. I could feel the old ache rising, the guilt, the sadness, the need to fix everything. But this time I didn't move. I stayed still. I love you, Dax, I said quietly, but I love myself too. And I can't keep pretending that your disrespect is normal. He stared at me, eyes glassy. You'll regret this, I smiled faintly. Maybe, but at least I'll regret it standing tall, not lying on the floor. He opened his mouth to speak again, but I held up my hand. Stop, I've said what I needed to say. Now it's your turn to live with it. He looked down at the letter again, the same letter that now felt heavier than any inheritance ever could. His fingers curled around it, crumpling the edges. Felicity's eyes burned with fury. You'll hear from our lawyer, she spat. Tell him to bring coffee, I said, turning back to the counter. Randy likes it black. The silence that followed was thick, electric. I could hear Dax breathing hard behind me, could almost feel the anger radiating from his skin. But I didn't turn around. I just poured myself another cup of coffee, calm, quiet, unbothered. For once I felt in control. I took a slow sip, staring out at the snow. My reflection looked stronger in the window, older, wiser, freer. I smiled to myself. Merry Christmas, I whispered, and somewhere deep inside I felt Henrik smile too. Hey, if this story's already got your heart racing, take a second to hit that subscribe button. These aren't just stories, they're reminders that standing up for yourself is never too late. Now, let's see what happens when Dax realizes just how much power his mother truly holds. He thought losing the money was the worst part, but what happened next would take away something far more valuable, his control. The kitchen felt colder now. Maybe it was the open window, maybe it was the energy, sharp, tense, ready to break. Dax stood there gripping the letter so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Felicity's face was frozen into that polished smile that never reached her eyes. I'd seen it 100 times, at dinners, at birthdays, even at Henrik's funeral. That smile wasn't for comfort. It was for control. You completely lost your mind, Dax finally said, his voice low, trembling with anger. I didn't answer. I just sipped my coffee. Slowly, calmly, the smell of roasted beans and quiet power filled the room. He stepped closer. You're not serious about this, Mom. You can't be. You wouldn't actually take everything away from your own son. I set the mug down and met his eyes. I didn't take anything away from you, Dax. You gave it up the moment you decided a chair was worth more than your mother's dignity. He flinched, and I saw something flicker, guilt maybe, or fear, but it disappeared fast, replaced by pride. You're overreacting. Felicity didn't mean anything by it. Felicity cut in smoothly, her tone dripping with fake concern. Mother Cordelia, no one wants to fight. I know emotions were high last night. You were tired, maybe feeling unwell. Unwell, I raised an eyebrow. I was pushed. She paused, then gave that fake little laugh. Oh, come on, you make it sound so dramatic. It was a misunderstanding. I let out a soft ha-ha-ha, the kind that isn't funny at all. A misunderstanding is forgetting to bring dessert. What happened last night was cruelty. Felicity's smile cracked. You're making a scene again. I leaned in just a little. Good, maybe it's time someone saw the real scene for once. Dax exhaled sharply, trying to regain control. Mom, this isn't you. You're not thinking clearly. I never thought clearer in my life. He ran a hand through his hair, his frustration spilling out. Do you know how hard I've worked, how much I've done for this family, and you just what? Decide to erase me, my voice softened. You erased yourself, Dax, one push, one moment, one choice, and you showed me exactly who you've become. Felicity folded her arms. This is insane. You're being manipulated, probably by that old lawyer of yours. He's just trying to profit off you. Enough, I said quietly, and for the first time she stopped talking. My voice wasn't loud, but it was solid. Sharp enough to cut through her noise. You two think this is about money. No, it's about respect, something you both stopped showing a long time ago. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Dax's jaw tightened. You've always been dramatic, he muttered. You and Dad both always needed control. Control? I echoed softly. No, Dax, I wanted peace. I wanted love that didn't come with conditions. He laughed bitterly. Love. You call this love? Yes, I said, steady. Because love without boundaries isn't love, it's weakness, and I refuse to be weak anymore. He slammed his palm against the counter, making the mug rattle. You're destroying our family. I took a slow step closer until we were face to face. You destroyed it when you decided your wife's comfort mattered more than your mother's respect. Felicity's voice cracked now, no polish left. You can't do this. We had plans, a house, investments. Dax is the heir. Not anymore, I said calmly. Her eyes flashed with fury. You'll regret this, old woman. I smiled softly. Maybe. But at least my regret will sleep peacefully. Dax turned away, running both hands over his face, breathing hard. We can fix this. Just call your lawyer and tell him to undo whatever crazy thing you did. No, I said. He froze. No, no, I repeated. You think everything can be undone with a phone call, but not this. This isn't about papers or money, Dax. This is about me taking my place back at my own table. His shoulders slumped. He looked older suddenly, not like my son anymore, but like a man who finally realized the world doesn't revolve around him. You're going to end up alone, he whispered. I blinked slowly. I already was. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence between us felt heavy, not angry anymore, just sad. Years of unspoken words hung in the air. Then Felicity broke it, her tone sharp again. We'll see about that, she hissed. She stormed out of the kitchen, her footsteps echoing down the hall. Dax followed after her, pausing just long enough to look back at me. His mouth opened like he wanted to say something, but he didn't. He just shook his head and left. The sound of their voices upstairs was muffled, tense. Words like lawyer and money floated faintly through the ceiling. I just stood there, surrounded by the soft ticking of the kitchen clock and the faint hum of the heater. The same kitchen where, hours ago, I'd stood bleeding and shaking. Now I stood still, strong, steady. I looked down at the crumpled letter he'd left on the table. My handwriting stared back at me, bold, neat, final. The ink had smudged a little from his grip, like the truth itself refused to be contained. I unfolded it and reread the last line I'd written. You pushed me once, Dax, but I'm done falling. I smiled faintly. Still true, I whispered outside. Snow began to fall again, heavier now, soft white flakes swirling through the morning light. The world looked clean, untouched. Fresh, I exhaled deeply and whispered, let it snow. I didn't know what would happen next, lawyers, threats, maybe worse. But I wasn't scared. For the first time in years, I felt peace humming in my chest. Then, faintly, I heard the sound of a child's voice upstairs, Priya. Sweet, innocent, caught in the middle of the storm, her parents created that sound, grounded me again. Reminded me why I did this. This wasn't destruction. This was protection, and deep down I knew someday she'd understand. If you've ever stood up after being pushed down, if you've ever had to remind the world who you are, subscribe. Not for me, but for every person who forgot their power until a story reminded them it's still there. I thought the storm was over. But that was before they turned love into a legal battle. Before they tried to take everything, even my mind. It didn't take long for the sound of chaos to follow, drawers opening, zippers screaming, doors slamming. The kind of noise that happens when people pack anger into suitcases. I stood by the kitchen counter, staring at the empty mug in my hands. The coffee had gone cold, but I didn't pour it out. I just held it, something warm once, something finished now. Kind of like us upstairs, Felicity's voice was sharp, slicing through the air. Pack everything, Dax. We're not staying another minute in this house. Her footsteps moved fast, stomping from room to room, then silence. Then doors banging again. I could almost picture her pacing, fuming, grabbing things that didn't even belong to her, muttering under her breath about betrayal and greed. Then Dax's voice, low, furious. Just stop yelling, Fel. I'll handle it, that's what he always said. Like life was something you could fix with volume. Sigh. I leaned against the table and whispered, handle it, huh? Let's see how that works this time. A few minutes later, I heard little footsteps on the stairs, light, hesitant, then, Grammy, I turned. There she was, my little Priya, still in her Christmas pajamas, clutching a stuffed rabbit. Her big brown eyes looked scared. I smiled gently, even though my heart ached. Hey, sweetheart, she walked closer, her lip trembling. Daddy's yelling again. I knelt down slowly, my hip protesting but my heart steady. It's okay, baby, they're just upset. Her eyes watered. Did I do something wrong? Oh, that broke me, just split me open. I hugged her tightly, her tiny arms wrapping around my neck. No, 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 you did nothing wrong, my love. None of this is your fault, she sniffled into my shoulder. Mommy said you're being mean, I sighed softly. Sometimes grown-ups say mean things when they're scared, but you know what? What? She whispered. Love doesn't mean you get to hurt people. Not even family. She pulled back slightly, her little brows furrowing in confusion. Then why did Daddy push you? I froze for a heartbeat, her words cutting deeper than anything Dax could have said. She'd seen it. She remembered I brushed her hair gently, whispering, because sometimes even good people forget what love looks like, but we can remind them by being kind, even when they're not. She nodded slowly, trying to understand in her small world's way upstairs. Felicity's voice echoed again, shrill and furious. We're leaving now, Dax, I mean it. Priya flinched. I stood and smoothed her hair. It's okay, why don't you sit here with Grammy? I'll make us some pancakes before you go. Her eyes brightened a little. With chocolate chips, of course, I smiled. Always with chocolate chips. She giggled, a soft sound, fragile but full of life. It made the whole house feel lighter, even just for a second. As I mixed the batter, I heard their voices getting closer, Dax arguing under his breath, Felicity hissing about lawyers and consequences. My hand stayed steady, the pan sizzled. The smell of butter filled the air, warm and calm, the opposite of everything happening around us. Then they appeared in the doorway, suitcases in hand. Anger in their eyes. Felicity looked at me first. We're leaving, she said flatly. I didn't look up. I figured. Dax's voice was quieter this time, but colder. You're really not going to change your mind? I flipped the pancake carefully. Not this time, you're making a huge mistake, Mom, he said. You're turning your back on your own son. I turned to face him, spatula in hand. No, Dax, you turned your back first. Felicity rolled her eyes. This is pathetic. You'll regret this when you're alone in this big house, surrounded by your precious memories. Maybe, I said softly, but my memories never pushed me to the floor. Her face went red. You're cruel. I smiled faintly. No. Just done being quiet. Dax's voice cracked slightly. You can't just erase me, Mom. You raised me to be strong. I did, I said, but I didn't raise you to be heartless. He looked at me for a long moment, and for the briefest second I saw it. Regret, the small, flickering kind that hides behind pride, but it was gone too fast. He grabbed the handle of his suitcase. We're done here. Priya's little voice broke through the tension. Daddy, are we leaving? He turned to her, softening instantly. Yes, Pumpkin, get your things. She looked between him and me, unsure. Can I finish my pancake first? Dax hesitated. Then Felicity snapped, no, Priya. We're late. I walked over, placed the plate gently in front of her. Take it with you, sweetheart. She smiled sadly and took a small bite, syrup on her chin. Thank you, Grammy. Always, baby. Felicity tugged her toward the door, muttering something about boundaries and manipulation. Dax stayed behind a second longer, staring at me. You'll regret this, he said again, but this time his voice cracked. I stepped closer. I already regret raising a man who thought money meant love. That one hit him hard. I saw it in the way his eyes flickered, his jaw clenched, his breath caught. He didn't answer. He just turned, suitcase dragging behind him. The front door opened, cold air rushing in, snow swirling at their feet. Then, slam silenced. The sound of tires crunching down the driveway faded slowly until there was nothing left but stillness. The kind that fills your chest and hurts because it's too quiet. I stood there, staring at the closed door, my hand on the counter. My knees felt weak, my heart heavy. But beneath all that sadness, there was something else. Something warm. Relief. I took a deep breath, exhaled slowly. Then I laughed, soft and broken, but real. Ha ha ha. Guess it's just you and me now, Henrik, I whispered. I sat down at the table where Priya's half-eaten pancake still sat. The syrup had formed a little heart shape on the plate. I smiled at it. Maybe that's a sign, I said quietly. A new beginning. The house was quiet, but it didn't feel empty. It felt lighter, peaceful. I looked around, the kitchen, the window, the snow falling outside. Every inch of it belonged to me again. Not just the house, but the space inside me that I'd given away for too long. I whispered softly, this is freedom. And for the first time in years, I felt it. If this story hits a place in your heart you've been protecting, subscribe now. Every week I share stories that remind you that peace isn't lost, it's reclaimed. I thought the storm had passed until 3 days later, a knock on my door turned peace into war. They weren't done, not by a long shot. Peace never lasts long when people can't stand to see you free. It had been 3 quiet days. No calls, no noise, just snow, books, and the steady sound of my own breathing. For the first time in years, the silence in my house didn't ache, it healed. I made tea in the mornings, watched the sun bounce off the snow, and thought, maybe this is what peace finally feels like. Then came the knock. It was sharp, fast, and full of purpose. Not the kind of knock that says hello, the kind that says prepare yourself. I opened the door slowly. A man in a black coat stood there, holding a thick envelope. Mrs. Westbrook? Yes, he handed it to me. You've been served, those 3 words, so small but they landed like bricks. I closed the door quietly behind him and just stood there, the envelope in my hands, heart thudding. I didn't even have to open it to know this was Dax's doing. I sat at the table, unsealed it, and unfolded the papers. The title read Emergency Petition for Guardianship. My own son was trying to have me declared mentally incompetent. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I reread the first line twice, then 3 times. Petitioner claims respondent is making irrational financial decisions under diminished capacity and requires legal guardianship for her own protection. My lips trembled, not from fear but disbelief. Guardianship, I whispered. He's calling me unstable because I finally said no. I laughed once, a broken ha-ha-ha that came out like glass shattering. I picked up my phone, called Randy. He answered on the first ring. Cordelia, he's done it, I said. He's trying to take me to court. A pause, then his voice came firm, calm, sharp like a blade. We'll handle it. When's the hearing? 3 days. I'll prepare everything. That night I didn't sleep much. I walked through every room in the house, touching the walls. Henrik and I painted, the furniture we built, the memories we lived. Everything Dax was trying to take from me. Every single piece that held my life. In the living room, I stood in front of the family photo again. Henrik, Dax, little Priya. The photo used to bring me joy. Now it just reminded me that love without respect is a ticking bomb. Henrik, I whispered, you really were right. Love blinds us, doesn't it? I didn't cry, not this time. I couldn't afford to. 3 days passed in a blur of snow and preparation. Randy visited every morning. We went through files, doctor's notes, proof of my mental fitness, the signed and witnessed trust papers. Every detail needed to be perfect. Dax's lawyer will come for you hard, Randy warned. They'll try to paint you as unstable, emotional, maybe even delusional. I smirked. They'll have to try harder than that, he chuckled softly. That's the spirit I remember. We spent hours rehearsing my statement. I wasn't just defending assets, I was defending my sanity, my identity, my truth. By the night before the hearing, the air in the house felt heavy again. The calm before another storm. I lit a candle on the counter, just like Henrik used to when things got tense. The tiny flame flickered strong and steady. I whispered to it, tomorrow they'll see exactly how sane I am. The next morning I woke early, dressed in my best navy coat, simple pearl earrings and Henrik's brooch, the same one I wore the night Dax pushed me. My badge of memory, my quiet defiance. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see a victim. I saw a woman ready to fight. Randy picked me up right at 8. The courthouse was gray and cold, full of people rushing in and out. My heart pounded, but my steps didn't falter. We walked in together, side by side. The courtroom smelled like old wood and paper. Dax was already there. He looked sharp, new suit, perfect tie. Felicity sat beside him, her face painted in fake sorrow. She even brought tissues. I almost laughed again. When our eyes met, he looked away first. The judge entered, a middle-aged woman with a steady gaze. We're here regarding the matter of guardianship for Mrs. Cordelia Westbrook, she announced. Dax's lawyer started. Smooth voice, polished tone, pretending concern. Your Honor, my client is simply worried for his mother. She's making reckless decisions, giving away assets, isolating herself, showing signs of confusion and paranoia. I could almost predict every lie before it left his lips. It was like watching a rehearsed play. Then Felicity took the stand. She dabbed her eyes delicately, sighing for dramatic effect. We just want to help her. She's not herself anymore. Ever since my father-in-law passed, she's been different, yes, stronger, but that wasn't what she meant. Then came Dax. His voice shook slightly, like a man trying to sound calm while balancing guilt on his tongue. She fell on Christmas night, Your Honor. She's been forgetful, emotional. She sent texts in the middle of the night. She's not making rational choices. He looked straight at me. His eyes, the same eyes that used to sparkle when he ran into my arms as a child, now looked like strangers. My chest tightened, but I didn't look away. When it was my turn, I stood. My cane tapped softly on the floor. The courtroom went quiet. Your Honor, I began, my voice steady. I may be 73, but I am not broken. I am not confused. I am not irrational. I am a woman who cooked, cleaned, and built a home with love and was pushed to the floor for her effort. A faint gasp rippled through the room. I continued, calm but sharp. I signed those documents because I finally realized respect doesn't come with age, it comes with boundaries. I'm setting mine. Dax's lawyer interrupted. Mrs. Westbrook, isn't it true that you acted emotionally and without professional advice? I smiled faintly. No, counselor, I acted with legal guidance from a Harvard graduate who handled my husband's estate for 40 years. Would you like his credentials? Even the judge hid a small smile behind her notes. Then Randy stood. Your Honor, if I may present some evidence. He pulled a small recorder from his briefcase, a simple silver device that fit in his palm. Mrs. Westbrook was wearing this on Christmas night, he said. Her late husband gave it to her years ago for safety. It recorded the entire dinner. Dax's head snapped up. Felicity's face went white. The judge raised an eyebrow. Let's hear it. Randy pressed play. The courtroom filled with sound, laughter, the clinking of dishes, then my voice, soft and tired. This seat's fine, dear. Then Felicity's cold tone. That seat's for my mother-in-law. A thud. Priya's tiny voice, trembling. Daddy, why did you push Grammy? And then Dax's flat, heartless answer. Eat your potatoes, sweetheart, the room froze. The only sound left was the faint buzz of the recorder ending. My hands didn't shake. My eyes didn't tear. I just stood there, breathing evenly, waiting. The judge leaned forward, staring at Dax. "Mr. Westbrook," she said slowly, "would you like to change your testimony?" He stuttered. I didn't. You pushed your 73-year-old mother to the floor," she interrupted, voice cold. "And now you want guardianship over her." Petition denied. Her gavel came down with a sharp crack that echoed through the room. It was over. I looked at Dax, really looked. He was pale, trembling, small. Felicity looked furious, her fake tears drying fast. Strandy whispered, "You did it, Cordy," but I didn't smile. I just whispered back, "No, I survived it. The case was over. I thought it was done." But what came next, a knock on my door 2 days later, would bring someone I never expected and test my heart one last time. 2 days after the hearing, I woke up to quiet snow and a strange peace in my chest. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't scared of my phone ringing. I wasn't waiting for another attack, another apology that meant nothing. I just sat with my coffee, watched the snow, and breathed. The court battle had ended, but the echo of that recording still played in my head, Priya's tiny voice asking, "Daddy, why did you push Grammy?" That sound haunted me and healed me at the same time. It was proof of what I already knew, but also something more. That truth, once spoken, doesn't die. It lingers, it echoes, and it sets you free. I remember the judge's words crystal clear. "Not only is your mother completely competent, Mr. Westbrook, she has shown more wisdom than you have in your entire adult life." That sentence was worth every bruise, every tear, every sleepless night. I sat by the window, Henrik's brooch pinned to my sweater. The same one that glimmered under courtroom lights like quiet armor outside. Snow fell in soft sheets, covering everything in white. Clean, pure, unbothered. Inside, my heart finally matched that stillness until the doorbell rang. I frowned. Visitors were rare these days. I walked slowly to the door, my hip aching from the cold. When I opened it, I froze. "Grammy," a small voice said. There she was. Priya standing on the porch in her pink coat, holding a tiny suitcase. Her cheeks were red from the cold, her eyes shiny with tears. "Sweetheart," I gasped. "What are you doing here?" She sniffled. "Mommy and Daddy dropped me off at Mrs. Patterson's house. They said they had to go handle legal stuff, but she had to go to work, so I came here." My stomach dropped. "They left her alone?" I whispered. She nodded, eyes filling again. "I didn't know where else to go. I'm sorry, Grammy." "Oh, baby," I said, pulling her inside, closing the door behind us. "You never have to say sorry for coming home." She clung to me, trembling. Her tiny hands gripping my sweater like she was afraid I'd vanish too. "Daddy said you're bad now," she whispered, "that you stole from us." My heart cracked right down the middle. I brushed her hair from her face. "Is that what he told you?" She nodded. "But I don't think you're bad. I think you're just sad." That broke me. I held her tighter, tears finally spilling. "Oh, my sweet girl, I was sad, yes. But not anymore." "Why did Daddy push you, Grammy?" she asked again, looking up with those big, honest eyes. "How do you explain cruelty to a child? How do you make sense of betrayal without destroying her image of love?" I sighed softly. "Because sometimes people forget what's important. They forget that kindness matters more than money." She thought for a moment, then whispered, "Daddy forgot?" "Yes," I said gently, "but maybe one day he'll remember." I led her to the kitchen. "You hungry?" Her eyes lit up. "Hot chocolate with extra marshmallows," I smiled as I stirred the pot. She sat at the table, swinging her legs, humming a soft tune. The sound filled the house like sunlight. For the first time since that horrible night, laughter lived here again. When I handed her the mug, she cupped it in both hands. She said, smiling through the steam. "You make it better than Mommy." I chuckled. "Don't tell her that." We sat together in silence for a while. She dipped her marshmallows, sipping carefully, her nose scrunching every time it was too hot. I memorized that moment, the peace, the warmth. The simple truth that this was what family was supposed to feel like. Then, out of nowhere, she asked softly, "Grammy." "Yes, baby. When I turn 25, will I really get money from Grandpa?" I blinked, taken aback. "Who told you that?" "Daddy did," she said, her voice small. "He said Grandpa made a promise. He said the lawyer man took it away and gave it to me instead." So he'd already told her, probably in anger. Probably twisting it. I swallowed. "That's true, sweetheart, but it's not about money, it's about love. Grandpa wanted to make sure you always had choices, that no one could ever make you feel small for not having enough." She nodded, thoughtful. Then after a pause she asked, "Can I share it with Daddy when I grow up?" I froze. "Why do you want to?" She shrugged. "Because if he says sorry for real, I want him to be happy too." Tears burned behind my eyes. That tiny innocent heart, still full of forgiveness after everything. I leaned forward, smiling softly. "If he earns it, sweetheart, if he really, truly earns it." She smiled, satisfied. Okay, we spent the rest of the day baking cookies, laughing when flour dusted her nose, dancing to old Christmas songs. It felt like magic, the kind that heals what life tries to break. That night, I tucked her into the guest room, the one that used to be Dax's. I kissed her forehead. "Sleep well, my love." As I turned to leave, she murmured, half asleep, "I love you, Grammy." I love you more, I whispered. I went back downstairs and sat in my chair, Henrik's chair. The one I was pushed out of, only now I sat in it with pride. The house was quiet again, but not lonely. The sound of Priya's breathing upstairs was all the proof I needed that I'd done the right thing. Then my phone buzzed. Randy's name, Cordelia, he said, voice tight. You sitting down, I am. Dax filed another motion. He's not giving up. This time he's claiming you're dangerous, that you're manipulating Priya. I laughed softly. Of course he is, he hesitated. You still have that recording? Yes, good, he said. We'll need it again. I looked toward the stairs where Priya slept peacefully, clutching her stuffed rabbit. I'm not scared anymore, Randy, I said quietly. He was silent for a second, then softly, you sound like Henrik when he knew he'd already won. I smiled. Maybe I finally did. I ended the call, turned off the lights, and stared out the window. Snow fell heavier now, soft, steady, unstoppable like peace itself coming back home. I thought the storm had ended. But the next morning, when the phone rang again, what I learned would change everything, even the way I saw myself. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the snow like melted gold. The world outside was peaceful again, so still, you'd never guess how much had changed inside these walls. I made 2 cups of cocoa, one for me, one for Priya, and we sat by the window together, wrapped in blankets, watching the soft white flakes drift down. It felt like the world was exhaling. Like everything ugly had finally settled, but deep down, I knew it wasn't over. Not really. Peace doesn't come because people stop fighting you. It comes when you stop needing their approval, and that lesson had taken me 73 years to learn. Priya smiled up at me, chocolate mustache on her lip. Grammy, are we safe now? I brushed her cheek gently. Yes, baby, we're safe now. She nodded, satisfied, and turned back to the window, whispering, it's snowing like a movie. I smiled. It is, isn't it? But when she ran upstairs to get her toys, I stayed by the window, staring out, thinking about everything that led here. The truth is, I hadn't told anyone, not even Randy, what really happened that night before Christmas. Not the whole truth. I closed my eyes, and it replayed in my head, clear as day. 3 weeks before that dinner, I'd overheard Dax on the phone with Felicity. His voice low, sharp, she's getting old, Fel. We just have to show she's slipping, emotional, unstable. Once I have guardianship, the trust transfers. I remembered how my blood went cold. How I'd stood behind the kitchen door, frozen, clutching my chest. He was planning it. My own son. That's when I made the choice. I didn't argue. I didn't confront him. I just smiled, nodded, and waited. I charged the old recorder Henrik gave me years ago, the same one that saved me in court, and I wore it on Christmas night. I didn't do it by accident. I did it because I knew, so when Dax shoved me, I didn't just fall, I let myself. The sound of that fall, the silence that followed it became my armor, the proof of everything I'd lived with quietly for years. I whispered now to the empty kitchen, maybe that makes me cruel. Or maybe it just makes me smart, because here's the truth no one wants to say out loud. Sometimes when people push you to the edge, you have to stop waiting for them to save you and save yourself. I looked up at Henrik's photo on the wall. He was smiling, that same easy smile he always wore, eyes soft, proud. You'd probably say I went too far, I murmured. But maybe I finally went far enough. The phone buzzed on the table. A text from Randy, filed the final paperwork. All done, Priya's trust secure, the rest donated as you wanted. You did it, Cordy. I smiled, setting the phone down. We did it, Henrik. Upstairs I heard laughter, pure, bubbling, childlike laughter, Priya's laughter. The kind that makes the whole house come alive again. I closed my eyes and let that sound fill me. This house had been built with love, bruised by pride, and now reborn with truth. And as I sat there, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I didn't hate Dax, I just didn't owe him forgiveness. Some betrayals don't need revenge. They need closure, and that I already had. When Priya came running down the stairs holding her drawing, a big pink heart with me plus Grammy written inside, I couldn't stop the tears. She handed it to me proudly. It's us forever, right? I hugged her tight. Forever, my darling. Outside, the snow kept falling, soft and endless, like time itself was trying to give me one more gentle reminder. It's never too late to choose yourself. That night, after tucking Priya in, I made one last cup of hot chocolate and sat in my chair, the same one Henrik built, the same one I was pushed out of. I ran my hand along the smooth wooden armrest, smiled, and whispered, full circle. My phone buzzed again, a voicemail from Dax. I didn't answer, but I listened. Mom, his voice said, rough, broken. I don't know what to say anymore. I messed up. I thought I could fix things, but everything's falling apart. I miss you. For a long moment, I said nothing. My eyes burned, but no tears came. I deleted the message. Sometimes forgiveness is silence. The snow outside glowed in the moonlight. The world looked new. I leaned back, closing my eyes, breathing in the scent of cocoa and peace. Maybe one day Dax will understand. Maybe not, but Priya will grow up knowing the truth, that love isn't about what you inherit. It's about who shows up when everyone else leaves, and that's the legacy I wanted to leave behind. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that standing up for yourself doesn't make you cold, it makes you whole, then don't forget to subscribe. Every story here isn't just a story, it's a reminder. That self-respect isn't arrogance, that peace isn't selfish, and that no matter how late it feels, you can always start again, so stay. Watch the next one. Somewhere out there, someone needs to hear your kind of strength. They pushed her once, but she never fell again. And maybe that's what strength really is, not fighting louder, but standing quieter, stronger, and never letting go of your dignity again.